Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 9 of the Latent Force Prepared Defensive Action podcast. In today's episode, Mike and I are going to talk about the 4 foundational handgun shooting stances, and we're going to welcome special guest Dave Laird. And Dave and I are going to break down the recent defensive shooting involving BJ Baldwin and Tori Nanaka, so stick around.
Three, two, one. This is the Latent Force Prepared Defensive Action podcast.
We believe there's no defensive situation so bad that your lack of training can't make it worse. We're on a mission to cut the crap in the firearms industry and bring you topics and discussions that are designed to make you a more informed and effective gunfighter. If it has to do with alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and everything else, we're going to talk about it. Guys, gals, and submarine racers, here are your hosts, Jay Eisenicke and Mike Garza. All right, welcome to the Latent Force Prepared Defensive Action podcast. My name's Jay Eisenicke, and with me is my co-host, Mike Garza. Mike, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Doing pretty good. Well, you know, I was out surfing around, and I came across something that I knew that you would just really find really funny. And I stumbled upon it because a long time ago, I think in our very first episode, maybe it was the second episode, we talked about my favorite saying in the gun culture. Do you remember what that was?
No.
Okay, it was keep your booger hook off the bang switch. You remember that?
Yeah. I remember that one.
Okay, so I'm sitting here going through there, and I came across this website, and it had funny pro-gun sayings. And so I was like, man, I got to look through this because I got to see how many of these are actually funny. And, you know, guess which one was at the top of the list?
That one.
Exactly. Keep your booger hook off the bang switch until you want to destroy something. Now, I haven't heard the want to destroy something, but, you know, whatever. So let's see. And here's my personal favorite was the one that I came across here was no matter how responsible he seems, never give your gun to a monkey.
Do you remember that monkey one video that we had with the AK-47?
Yeah. And they're like in the jungle and they give it to him and he's all shooting around.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I started. No matter how responsible he looks, don't give him a gun.
I don't know. That usually makes pretty good stories.
It does, but it makes viral videos for sure. So what's the other one? I miss my ex, but my aim is improving. How about that? Let's see.
Well, technically, we do tell him to shoot center of mass and not in one spot.
There you go. Let's see. Oh, and of course, the other one, I carry a gun because the cop is too heavy.
Yeah,
I heard that one. Let's see. Intruders found here at night will be found here in the morning. How about that?
That's a good one.
So they had a list. I don't know. There was like 50 or 60 of them here. I thought it was pretty funny. So maybe anybody that's out there listening, if you have one of your favorite goofy pro-gun sayings that you know of, put it in the comments to this podcast or send it to us at podcast@latentforce.com and we'll be sure to share those with the rest of the 12 people that listen to this podcast on a regular basis. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. So, but any of the other ones that you could think of that you remember that might be kind of funny, and I'll see if it's on the list.
You know, usually it happens in the heat of the moment when somebody's just totally messing up. And normally I just can't, they don't come off the top of my head unless I'm actually in the heat of the moment.
Right. Well, here's another one that I just saw, and I highlighted these ahead of time because I was like, oh, I got to bring them up. Why press 911 when you could squeeze 9mm? Oh my gosh. Oh, whatever. The things that people think of. So Speaking of podcast at latentforce.com, where you can send your comments or questions whenever you want, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Doesn't necessarily mean that we'll answer them. Well, we try. I got an email, and I didn't share this with you ahead of time, but I'm going to share it with you now.
Oh, joy.
I know. It's going to be good. Now, do you remember the episode we did? It was just a couple of my episodes back where we were talking about the CCW class, where the statistic about how often police officers train, or criminals it was. They thought they trained 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And we both got a good kick out of that, and we went off. Well, this is a specific response to that, our statement about the training. And I'm going to guess that Nathan is a police officer of some sort, because he wrote us a little note.
Ooh, a nasty gram.
Yes. So here I feel kind of like Rush Limbaugh. Can you hear the paper in my nicotine stained fingers? So here it is. This is from Nathan, and it says, "Hey guys, I wanted to take a moment to comment about your recent episode on the guns that criminals carry. While I agree with the info on criminals, I wanted to make a point about the cops and their training. You and Mike," now this is the problem that I have with this, is that, and I told you this before, is that you need to start talking more, because then people will lash out at you instead of me. Because they point things out. The last one was about, I said apparently too much. So
well, apparently you do.
I know. So anyways, of course, he's addressing it to me. It says, "You and Mike said that cops only train maybe 1 to 2 times a year and consider qualification as training. While this may be true with some, it is not the case with everyone." Here we go.
No kidding.
I know, but here we go. "Qualification is a test and not training. I guess that was your point. Just remember, there are some of us out there that do actually train several times a week and take classes a couple of times a year. This is where it gets good. Pretty please, don't lump all of us in the same group." I thought that was so polite of him. So, but here's the best part. It says, "Love the podcast. Keep them coming, Nathan." So there you go. What do you got to say to that?
Listen, you little douche knuckle. I don't have the time nor the inclination. See, that's what I'm saying. In the heat of the moment, that's when they come out. Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100% with Nathan. Yeah, we're not, and I apologize if we lump all cops together. However, here, when we were out on the beat, I would never write a report. You know why? Because I suck at writing reports. I would just call my sergeant and be like, "Hey, Sarge, do you have a Word document saved that fits this?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, hold on a second. I'll send it to you." And then that was it. Now, when gunfighting and translating into Spanish came along, the first thing they would do is call my number out, because that's what I do. So yes, absolutely. I agree with you, Nathan, 100%. I apologize for lumping everyone together. That was not my intent, but I'm going to say this. You're probably the 5% on the force. And tell us if we're right or wrong on that. Because when we were out there on the line, I used to remember when it would start to drizzle and everyone would be like, "Oh, right, we don't have to do anything today, do we?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
Exactly.
Because your shift just started and it's raining, so we just stay in the car and drink coffee and donuts."
Now that reminds me. Now, see, you just said everything that just drove me to this site. It's called Hard Charger PD, and it's on Instagram. Have you checked it out? I know I tagged you on one of it so you could see it. Did you look at it?
I don't really do social media, probably for all of the reasons that people hate me.
So this you're going to really get a kick out of it. And the one they posted up today is really funny. But it is a Hard Charger PD, and they talk about, so my question is to you, what is a hard charger?
I don't know, to tell you the truth. I kind of think I know, but okay. So I'll give you my idea of it. It's that guy that, number one, I don't know. I thought maybe we were hard chargers. Maybe we're not. It's that guy that doesn't like reports. It just likes to go and get stuff done and then avoid paperwork, cameras, and media.
Okay. Okay. I think that's probably that's close. So here I had to look it up and I had to find a dictionary. This was I didn't have to find.
You
a
went
dictionary.
to Webster's? I can't believe
Something
you went
like
to
that.
Webster's.
I did. So what they call is hard charging is very aggressive, determined, or ambitious. So then I also went to one of those like Urban Dictionaries things, and I checked it out, and I don't know what it was exactly, and it says a go-getter, a hot shot, or over ambitious. So that type of person that just
see that. But that's the thing is like I couldn't care less. Speed down the road, I don't give two hoots, man. Do 100. See if you can pop triple digits. I don't care. I want the drug dealers, the bad guys, the sexual predators. I want those guys.
Hard charger.
That's right.
Hard charger.
That's right.
That's you. Yep. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Hey, 100 miles an hour, whatever, 100 plus, anytime,
I don't give a shit.
anywhere.
I don't care.
Yep.
I don't care.
Yep. Who cares? So anyways, and now Nathan's going to write a follow-up email and he's going to go, hey, now you're putting me in that hard charger category. That's not what I'm saying, Nathan. Step back off the ledge. Easy, easy, easy. I was just saying it reminded me.
Your pre-workout shake is way too strong.
Exactly right. But you got, if you don't go in and check this out, the one was so funny that was today on that one is that it obviously is in either China or I'm guessing it's China or
wait a minute. You didn't say it correctly. China. You got to put your fingertips up too. China.
Yes, I do that. I know how to do that. I got the hand gestures down. I think it's in China and maybe in Korea or something like that. But it's got this little kid who's maybe about 7 years old, and he's sitting at his desk, and he's obviously in uniform like everybody else, and he's flipping the pages to the book, and he's like scooping the stuff out of the book and then pushing it up to his head, and then he flips the page, and then he scoops it up, and then he pushes it to his head, and then to the top of it, it says, a rookie at the academy who hasn't studied one bit for the penal code test coming up in 20 minutes.
That was definitely me.
Oh my gosh. So that's just funny. Anyways, so check it out. It's good cop humor. So, anyways,
well, next time I'm on the pod, I'll look it up.
Okay. All right. Well, now we'll know. Just don't send me any other kind of messages or anything like that. So now Independence Day came and went. And so, I think you and I talked, maybe it was offline or on one of the other episodes, that I was going to try to get into more of the competition stuff to find a little bit more of excitement around. And so this 4th of July, on the actual 4th of July, I went out and shot my first steel challenge match.
Oh, nice. Did you go to the ghetto to do that?
Well, it wasn't a drive-by steel match.
Oh, okay. My bad.
No, this was up by the house, and we did it, and I've never done it before. And it was actually pretty fun. I had a good time. Have you ever done the steel challenge before?
I've done a couple of them. I got in trouble though, because, you're supposed to point your barrel towards the berm at all times. But when I do my tack reloads, I'm looking through my gun to see the threat. So they all got excited at me. So, all right, sorry. And for me, that's a hard habit to break. So,
well, I had Mike Garza in the back of my mind when they were going over for new shooters. And the first question I had was, all right, so I want to be clear. Can I put the muzzle only downrange, or can I point the muzzle straight up? And they said, absolutely not. The muzzle has to be downrange at the berm.
Yeah, of course.
So I was like, well, I'm not going to be Mike this time. So,
yeah, the insurance doesn't like it when bullets go straight up in the air.
Yeah. So fortunately, there isn't too much moving in Steel Challenge. There's only like one stage. I guess they only have, I don't know a whole bunch about it except for what I did the reading before, but apparently they have only so many type of setups, and only a couple of them do you actually move. And the one that we had, you only took you move laterally maybe 6 or 8 feet, maybe 10 feet, and engage the target. So
yeah, did you have to stand in little squares?
Yes, you had to stand in a little square.
Yep.
And it was funny, and I posted it up on the Latent Force Instagram. But so I did it, and my whole goal to doing this thing was I just wanted to shoot as I wanted to hit all the targets, and I didn't want to miss. So my whole goal was not to miss. So I wasn't really too worried about the time.
Right.
And then if I could, so I was trying to get it as fast as I could without missing instead of just trying to get it as fast. And so fortunately I did, out of 19 shooters, I took 5th. So I was pretty excited about that.
Dang, nice.
I know. And that was production stuff too. So I was just like straight out of, out of the box type of thing.
Straight
so
out
I
of
just
Compton?
used my, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I had to scrape the urban sights off the side of the gun in order for it to still qualify as production. But no, I used my duty, M&P 45.
Oh, look at you.
And yeah, but here's the funny thing. I probably could have shaved easily, I don't know, 10 seconds off my time if I didn't have to wait around for that damn bullet to hit the steel.
Yeah, that's why you should have used a suppressor too. Then you wouldn't even known.
That would have been worse. So I'm sitting there waiting to hear the gong on the steel before I move, to the next one. So
Right.
you don't want to have to go back. So anyways, I posted that up about how, the delay on those 45s are just, fat and slow.
Yeah, but
down
now
to the
if you're a
steel.
sight picture, it's perfect. Why would you wait?
Well, I know, but I was, because you just think, I wanted to make sure I didn't have to go back, I guess. I don't know. So, well, anyways, it was pretty fun. I recommend it. I've got a IDPA match. Now I've never done one of those either. So that ought to be fun, that I'm doing in 2 weeks.
Now those guys have a bunch of rules you got to follow.
I know. So I got to be there. The orientation, new shooter orientation is like half an hour.
It's funny because you brought up some memories. When I did my couple steel matches, I did I think, where was I? Oh, Rio Salado in Arizona, if you've ever been there. And I did one, and the guy was like, "Hey man, you're pretty fast, but you keep doing, when you reload your gun, you don't have to save your ammo." Because I wasn't really there to practice anything other than shooting people, right? Steel targets. So I was like, I don't care. I was still doing everything tactically. I was saving my ammo. I was doing tactical reloads correctly, not like those guys. Because when you're running competition, you're running against the clock. So, when you dump a mag, you don't care if it's got 3 or 4 because you got, 10 more on you. So the guy was like, I'm like, "Oh, thanks I appreciate the input, but I'm kind of like sticking to my training. I'm just here because I don't have to pick up brass. You guys do it. And then as soon as you guys start, then I walk away. And then that way I don't have to pick up brass."
Yeah. Unfortunately, we had to pick up brass. So they must do it different here than they do there.
I just grabbed the timer. I'm like, "I'm timer."
Oh, I see. Yeah, the scorekeeper or the timer. Yeah. That is the best. But best thing
now
to do.
I'll never be able to go back to Rio Salado because now I just given out my A game.
Yep, they know who you are. Well, the one thing that I found interesting, and the reason that when I was there, I was really looking, was to see how everybody does their stance and where you can see the I don't want to say the slowness, but I guess where people's time where things that they do adds up to their total score. So their score is higher because of the things that they do. And one of the things is a transition from, cause it's 5 targets and you got to go left or right or however they set up the course.
Right.
And a lot of people, they take the shot and then they drop.
Yep.
They drop the gun and then they move it and then they raise it back up to get into the sight picture.
Right.
And, that was one thing that I noticed the most. A lot of people do that instead of where you just, like a turret, where you just move left, right, and you don't move anything.
Right.
But the other thing, which I thought was interesting, was we're talking about is everybody's differences in stance.
Yep.
And, there's a lot of people, and I posted up today was just to go back to an article that I had written where we talked about stance before. And, the common ones, right, are going to be, you're going to be looking at is like isosceles. The 4 most common, I guess, if you would say, is like the isosceles, the weaver, the modified weaver, and I think they also call it like I think it's called the Chapman.
Right. And
then you have the natural fighting stance. I think everybody's got a different term for it, but it's just the natural fighting stance. And so it was interesting to see the different stances that everybody uses. So I went back and I read this article I wrote because I was like, maybe it's actually something good. And surprisingly, it was. I thought it was great. But so one of the things that I thought about was how the stance is the key thing to this was, I guess for me, was that how you do your stance. There's actually was research that was done, and the guy's name, and I'm gonna have to look it up again because I want to make sure that I'm right. I don't want to misspeak. Was Harland Westmoreland, and he wrote an article for one of these cop magazines, Law and Order magazine, back in 1989. And his study was to find out what kind of stances people use in, stressful situations. So you remember, I know you and I, during when we went through our firearms instructor academy to become firearms instructors, they talked about the Shanghai Police Department. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that?
I don't know, refresh my memory of the story.
Okay, so the Shanghai Police Department back in 1927 was the origins of the isosceles. That's really where it came from. If you remember. So that was where it was in their training doctrine because of how they had trained for fighting. And so it was very much, feet shoulder length apart, squatting down, low center of gravity, that type of stuff, arms straight forward, because that was how they trained for their martial arts.
I don't remember. Sorry, Dan.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Well, anyways, so that's where it started from. Now a little, I'm going to give you all the little factoids, right? So, and then of course everybody embraced the isosceles because of, the oncoming of body armor.
Right.
And you could now, when you squared up to the target, you had body armor facing the threat, and you would take rounds of, you'd take it into the body armor instead. So it was interesting to see how many people use that isosceles in the shooting, and it's got to, it's got to be, it's a high percentage. What do you think of the people that are using isosceles now?
I would hope it would be way up there, and like in the 90s.
Yeah, I would think so. But
with that said, I like you, when I was through my steel challenge, I saw all kinds of crazy stuff. I even saw teacupping, from a lot of people. So I don't know.
I saw that too.
I would say maybe if you're in the know, like if you're like Nathan, a cop that knows and does actual training, they probably, they're in the high percentages. But I don't know. Now that I think about it, I don't know. That's actually a really good question.
Well, I think I saw more people, and this was, and again, so there was 49 shooters total that were there. And I just kind of tried to watch everybody, when they were doing theirs. And I actually think that the majority, high percentage, was more of a, I can honestly tell you, I don't think I saw one person that was doing a weaver stance.
Oh, wow.
Or doing, even the older guys. There was a couple of guys out there with big old revolvers, and they were, in their 60s, and I was thought for sure, but they weren't even doing that. And there wasn't any kind of Chapman stuff or anything like that either. I think most people have kind of settled into that more natural stance, which is kind of more of a fighter stance than, because obviously the advantage of the isosceles is that you got that turret, right? Is that you can 270 degrees left and right. Yep. You can move really good left or right, but you can't move as well forward to backwards.
Now I'm confused a little bit. I thought you said you placed 4th out of 19, but then you said there was 50.
No, I played 5th out of 19. That was in the production class.
Oh, I see. There was other people shooting though. Okay.
Yeah, so overall, I placed 23rd, I think, in all classes,
right.
Out of all classes.
Now, for the record, do you want to know what I placed when I actually went and shot?
Of course, Mike. Tell me where you finished.
At the top, because if you're not first, you're last.
Yeah, I was like like I said, I was a 23rd or whatever loser. I get it. Fine.
Now, I don't know what I was overall, but in my class, in my division, I was first. One.
First. Okay.
China.
Well, my goal, like I said, I was just going there just to try to go in and, I wasn't trying. And there was a couple where I was like, okay, I got this down. I'm going to speed up as fast as I could,
Right.
but, or faster. But, anyways.
You just need to drive around with a cougar in your car.
What?
A cougar.
What the hell?
You have it. Come on. I cannot be the only person that has seen Ricky Bobby.
Okay. Well, see, you kind of got to give me some sort of reference about a cougar. Okay, I have.
If you're not first or
I don't know.
last, that's where that came from. I was on. Come on. We need to sync up.
Okay.
This is ridiculous.
All right. That is pretty sad. Okay, well, I'm just going to stop this whole thing and start
I'm done.
all over.
I'm going to go get McDonald's.
Yeah. So those stances, that's what I saw was the natural stuff. So obviously the Weaver, everybody knows that it came from, it wasn't Dennis Weaver. Okay. That's not who it was. I know he was a movie star and everything, but was it Columbo?
Yeah,
No.
I
That was,
know.
who was Dennis Weaver? He played some guy that had the hat and the jacket and it doesn't matter. Anyways, it was something like Columbo. Somebody will put it in the comments and tell us who the heck it was. But anyways, it was, that was back in the 50s and that was Jack Weaver. And he was a buddy with, Jeff Cooper, who founded Gunsight. Anyway, so that was his thing where he kind of bladed off, and that was the whole thing, is that it, was good because it minimized your size as a target, but you were, that was before body armor. And so you had, but it's like super complicated to get into. I think it's a great stance in the grip and everything, the push pull.
Was it gun?
Elbows down.
Was it Gunsmoke?
Gunsmoke.
It says he's in Gunsmoke.
Oh, you're looking it up. No, he was like a cop, detective, private eye
All right,
guy.
I'll keep looking.
He had like a hat like Richard Petty, and he always wore the long
McLeod?
coat. McLeod, there it is.
Yeah. That little Mexican does know something.
Dennis Weaver. There you go. So the Weaver was good because you had that push pull with your hands, you're sideways, but the problem is you can't go left or right very much. So, you can go to the right, obviously, to your strong side, but when you go try to go over,
it's the other way.
well, yeah. So, but right is your strong hand. You had plenty of movement to that side, but you couldn't see anything. In order to get to your weak side, you had to break down your stance and move and whatever. So there's kind of the disadvantage.
I wonder if back in the day they would partner you up with the opposite hand type person, and then the guy on the left always drove, and the right-handed guy would always be the passenger.
Well, I suppose it's something worth a look into.
Somebody on the internet will know.
So obviously it was a more difficult setup for you to do, and so it wasn't as desirable. So anyways, getting back to my point about this whole darn thing, and you're saying, could you please stay on topic and quit getting off into the weeds? So this guy went in, his name, obviously, we're back to what his name was Harold Westmoreland back in 1989. So he did a study on 98 deadly force events that were observed through video. Okay, and this was his observations. And the subjects were trained in and regularly used the Weaver stance. So this was back in 89. So that was before really body armor and switching over to isosceles really happened. And so he had 66 of those events were considered routine or spontaneous, which meant that the gun was in the holster. And then 32 of them were high risk or non-spontaneous, which meant the gun was already out of the holster. So here was the interesting thing that he found. Is so even though these people were trained in the Weaver, of those 39 spontaneous events where they drew out of the holster, 96% of them, 96.7% of those used the isosceles. And of the 27%, there were, and that was anything that was under 10 feet. So let me get some clarification there. So 27 spontaneous ones over 10 feet, 93% of them used the isosceles. And only 7% used the Weaver. So the further out they got, the more time they had, the more likely they were in a very small amount to go to the Weaver. But mostly in that dynamic situation, they immediately, even though they were trained in the Weaver, they went to the isosceles. So it's just interesting. So I'm just reading through, if you hear the paper flipping here. So basically we're going to revert no matter what our training is, we're going to revert to that natural stance, which is going to be the isosceles or that boxer stance. And the data basically proves that under stress, when stuff like that happens, people are going to go 90 some percent of the time. People are going to go to that isosceles or natural fighting stance. And it was proved out there on the range at the shooting, at that match, that's what most people were using.
Very interesting.
Well, I try to be interesting. You know me.
You had me at hello.
Oh, how sweet. Well, now that we talked about stance and competition, one of the things that is important, one of the discussions that I thought was important to have is about the value of competition and how it goes into defensive shooting. And a lot of times people on the defensive side don't think that, just defensive shooters don't think competition translates because, the course of fire, but in a defensive situation, you don't. But to me, I think that although it may not be a perfect mirror in the situation, there's plenty of things in it that you can find of value to that go back and forth. So there's some things from just defensive shooting of all the tactics and that type of stuff and focusing on defensive personal defense that translate into competition. And there's plenty of things in competition that translate into defensive shooting. And so one perfect example was recently was BJ Baldwin. If you don't know, he's a world champion trophy truck off-road racer. And he and his girlfriend, Tori Nanaka, who is like a world champion shooter, Team Glock, Team Terran Tactical, all that kind of stuff. They were in an actual shooting in Las Vegas where two guys came in at 2:00 in the morning and attacked them while they were eating at an In-N-Out in Las Vegas. And so I thought it would be a great conversation to have. And we invited our good friend Dave Laird from Dynamic Combative Solutions to have a discussion with us and talk about that whole situation. So now, Mike, you were busy. You weren't able to join in on that, but I did record it with Dave. So I thought this would be a good time to share that conversation, and we'll catch it on the other side.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, today we have a special guest joining us, and his name is David Laird, and he is with a company called Dynamic Combative Solutions out of Phoenix, Arizona. Now, we've known Dave for a number of years and have taken some training classes from him. He's taken some training classes from us. And I think Dave's unique background will give us some good perspective on some training topics we wanted to talk about today. And we'll see where that goes. So, Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and DCS?
Okay. I'm the owner of Dynamic Combative Solutions here in Phoenix, Arizona. And I've been a firearms instructor since probably around 2006. I started shooting at the age of 6. Every male member of my family served in the United States military, all of them Army. I have 4 boys, 2 girls. 2 of them are currently serving in the Army as well. Started martial arts at the age of 10, studied under many masters, several different styles. When I turned 18, I joined the Army. Served 4 years in the 82nd Airborne Division. I was in the infantry. I was a heavy anti-tank weapons specialist and heavy weapons squad leader. Well, when I got out, I volunteered 4 years in the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department. And then after that, I served overseas as a civilian contractor from 2007 to 2008. When I returned home, I got real involved with my local church security. That made me take my firearms instruction a little bit more serious. I had a friend who owned a range. I started teaching there, built a big program, and we built 2 additional stores, and at our peak, we had 30 firearms instructors. We were teaching 30 classes a week, thousands of students per month. And as of March 2019, due to his unfortunate timely passing, I decided to venture off my own, start my own company, and it's been kind of a wild rush these last 2 years. I have every NRA certification. I'm a training counselor, so I can certify instructors. I went through the NRA Carry Guard instructor program. I'm currently enrolled in the Active Self-Protection Instructor Program, and I've trained with as many people as I possibly can around the country, and I'm constantly searching for other classes to take instruction from. So it's been a lot of fun.
And Dave, that's kind of where we met is, if I remember right, I think you attended one of our carbine classes. And I think that that's kind of how we ended up starting to get to know each other and doing that training with each other.
Yeah, actually, the first class I took with you was right after I took over that business as the training director. I came in and did just a basic pistol class with you guys, and Mike identified right away that I didn't belong in the class, so he started pushing me a little harder while you worked with the other student. And then I think you guys did a carbine class a few months later, and I came back to do the carbine class with you guys.
Yeah, that was one thing that I really appreciated about it, was that was kind of your philosophy, was to get out and take as many classes as you could from whoever you could, just to make yourself, more aware of what people are doing, and also different strategies and techniques. But that's not just you. That's something that you also encourage in your instructors and your instructor cadre, right?
Yeah, no, it's a requirement that everybody has to do 60 additional hours each year outside of what we already do. And I do that for lots of reasons. Number one, it's a great way to find additional talent in the area. I mean, we can't be everywhere all the time. I have found talent in the far reaches of the earth, and it's helped build new strong relationships. And so if somebody's in the Las Vegas area and they're telling me that, they got family that need firearms instruction, well, I know several instructors up there like yourself who can point them in the right direction, even if you're not available. So it's about finding people that are like-minded, have the same heart, that genuinely want to do the right thing for folks. And I think that passion's more important than the knowledge and skills. So I've seen some entry-level instructors put on fantastic classes, and that's all the farther they have a desire to go. It's just entry-level.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it too, Dave, is that you can have all the training and knowledge, but if you don't have the passion and a good, effective way to pass that on to people so they can learn and become passionate themselves, and what's the point?
Well, over the years, I've met a lot of instructors, and some of them are really awesome at what they do. And the ones that seem like they're driven by the dollars or driven by their own self-interest, I think have a hard time. They struggle. And I don't know. It's just, there's always personalities. There's some personalities you get along with better than others, but I see the ones that are self-interested and just after the money, that have a much more difficult time in this industry because it comes across in your class and how you teach, and that puts people off and they don't want to come back. Yeah,
I think that anybody that really, it's in just about anything, I guess, is that they're the people that have a passion for what they do, and that's the reason that they got into it. And then there's the folks that see that there's a way or an opportunity for them to make money. And I think that really people can kind of sniff that out. I guess they can see it, but I think it truly does. If you don't have passion and your motivation is just to, crank people out through the process to, make $50 or $100 off of them through a course, people are just they're going to figure it out, and it's going to come out in the quality of training. That's for sure. But I thought that was a good opportunity for us to kind of understand you and what you're about and what your philosophies are, because I think that's a good place for us to start with our conversation. So everybody kind of understands your background, and it kind of shows the information and your opinions that you have will provide tremendous value to them. So that's the reason I thought I'd give you an opportunity to kind of introduce yourself a little bit to everybody. But, one of the things that we've talked about, Mike and I have talked about, has been, which I'm sure you can appreciate, is always the qualifications. And I know that you have your guys where you have them train and do those qualification tests. And what we've discussed is that kind of the philosophy in law enforcement has always been, hey, that taking that qualification is considered training, when in reality it's just kind of an evaluation of their skills at that moment in time. So I'm just kind of wondering, kind of what your thought is about that, as far as qualification training, how much training to take, those kind of things. I guess, from that perspective, as far as a test versus qualification versus training, and that sort.
And when you look at like the military or the police officers as a whole, not all of them are working in the field. So there's a good many of them that are working behind the desk, or they're conducting investigations after the fact. They're detectives, they're crime scene, etc. They work in that field, but being proficient with their duty weapon isn't as high of a priority. They're very proficient in other areas of their expertise, and they certainly are spending a lot of time studying possibly those categories. So training and practice with their firearm takes a back row seat to what their primary role is. But as far as the actual line officers, I would still say that there's quite a few of them that see it as, they've met the minimum standard and they feel comfortable with that. And that's really what it's all about is, how far do you want to go before you feel comfortable? Now, a person like myself, I'm like, well, I'm never going to be comfortable. I'm constantly going to try and push myself further, faster, harder, etc. And I can see the vast majority of folks, they reach a certain level of training and they're like, okay, I'm good. I've already done X, Y, and Z, and they're done. And I try to remind all my students from the very beginning that it's a journey, not a destination.
All right. Now, see, that's something that I like, and I'd probably end up stealing that at some point, is a journey, not a destination. But I think you're spot on. Is that's how training works. It's got to be that desire to continually improve and change. And I just think that there's a majority of folks that still view it as a test, but there is an important minority of that group that views the importance of having that continuous training to develop their skills and get better.
What I can add to that, though, is recently I put a post up on our social media pages because I was in a group meeting with a bunch of instructors who are going through this fellowship instructor program that I'm involved in. And one of them, of course, is retired law enforcement. He's done 25 plus years. And now he's doing his firearms training. And they were asking why we carry the gun that we carry. Okay. And the funny part about that is I carry the gun that is, in my opinion, not the most accurate. I carry a Glock because 90% of my students carry Glocks to my class. And I have found and couldn't scientifically prove that it has some of the worst groupings compared to some other models like SIG and like FN, etc. So, but I thought his answer was really awesome because he said that I have a moral and ethical obligation to know the law and carry with me the gun that I can perform my best with at any given time, distance, or circumstance. I carry this gun because I am fluent in its language. So he also chose the Glock because that's what he's trained with for years in law enforcement. It's the firearm that he shoots the best, and he's so familiar with it. Like if anything ever goes wrong, if he ever has to perform at a certain level, that's the firearm that he's used his entire life. And so that's the reason why he still carries it today.
No, that's some really good stuff, Dave. I like that. And I think that is very true, that we have an obligation to understand our firearms and how they work. And I know Mike and I have talked about that previously, is, you have to know your firearm inside and out. And, you can't just fire it and then set it down in the gun safe and come back a year from now. That's not being familiar with your firearm and how it functions and performs. So I think that's a great point, is that it is, like you said, it's a journey, right? And so that requires you to be that familiar. You have to spend that time with your firearm. So and to be proficient, I guess, is the biggest thing, because then you have your responsibility legally with any round that you fire has a lawyer attached to it. So you want to make sure that you're being accurate with how you're firing it. And that's your obligation. Which brings me to a topic that I wanted to bring up with you. This was a recent shooting that happened here actually in Las Vegas, and it was with BJ Baldwin and his girlfriend, Tori Nanaka. Now, I don't know anybody that would not want, this is probably the worst people to get into a armed encounter with. If you don't know who Tori Nanaka is, she's from Team Glock, Team Terran Tactical, which is, the trainers to the stars. She was 2010, 2013 USPSA world champion, IDPA, IPSC champion. I mean, she's an impressive shooter. Now, BJ Baldwin is, world champion trophy truck racer and a hell of a good shooter by his own rights. And if you watch any videos of him shooting, I mean, he's impressive as well. Now, they were about 2:00 in the morning at an In-N-Out Burger just having some food. They happened to notice, BJ happened to notice about 80 yards away were a couple of guys in hoodies. They had the drawstrings tied up real tight, looking suspicious. He did, just aware. They were checking emails, whatever it might have been that they were doing, which I guess that's the point for me is that what is anybody doing at Fort Apache and Tropicana at 2:00 in the morning? I mean, sometimes you put yourself in a situation, if you can avoid stuff like that, I would avoid it. And so you're kind of there. And I don't know the circumstances, but I'm just saying is that sometimes we put ourselves in situations that we don't need to be put into, and being there at 2:00 in the morning probably wasn't the best choice. But anyways, so it was not until these guys started moving towards them that anything really developed. They got close enough to them to where it was maybe 15, 20 yards, started coming closer. The guy draws a gun. He fires 2 rounds at Tori, and then he takes his gun and he points at BJ and fires 6 rounds. And it isn't until this point in his mind that this guy then goes back to shoot again at Tori. Now, keep in mind is that this guy's fired 8 shots and hasn't hit anybody. And the moment that BJ sees him going back to shoot again at his girlfriend is when it clicks in his mind that he needs to engage this guy. And when we're talking about being familiar with, and you have an obligation to understand how your gun fires and being accurate and proficient with it, he draws and he fires 10 rounds. And in a very short period of time, I assure you it was quick. And he gets 10 rounds off, and he hits the guy 10 times. And the interesting thing about it that I thought is, there were many good comments that he made in his interview. But one of the things that he said that kind of goes back to some stuff that Mike and I had talked about in the past was about, everybody focuses on this quick draw and shooting real fast, drawing real fast and getting shots off quick in that sub 1 second draw and fire. If you can do that and get shots off and be effective with those shots, it's great, because we believe that whoever lands the first shot really dictates the path of that gunfight. And so it's very important for you to be the first person getting the shots off. And so I think that that's what dictates where the things go, is by who gets the rounds off first. So I found it really interesting is that BJ Baldwin in his video stated that all the shots that he got on target changed the fight into his favor. So it kind of validates, even in that situation, as somebody who is there, is that that's what changed the course of it. So, just kind of curious where your thoughts are with that, David.
Yeah, I think obviously there's a big kudos that goes out there that these people were faced with a violent encounter and did what was necessary. And he said himself, I think he said he fired 10 rounds, so 8 to the chest, 2 to the head. So their training, their deliberate action, all that stuff played a huge role. And I don't like to play second string quarterback, but you brought up some questions, like what were you doing in that part of town? Because you're probably more familiar with that area than I am. And you and I both know based on what he said, they're checking their emails in the parking lot, that when you're doing that, you're not really paying attention to your situational awareness. So you're distracted. 80 yards, awesome. But what if, these guys were closer? I'm also curious about the fact that this guy got 6 rounds off before he was able to return fire. Was this guy's gun black? Did it take him that long to notice? And obviously this guy was probably shooting quickly. So, I mean, if Baldwin can get off 10 rounds, let's say in probably 2 seconds, and make all of his hits, this guy fired 6 rounds. Let's say it took him 2 seconds. This kind of shows everybody just how quickly these things can happen.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, that's the whole point of this, right? Is he goes from shooting 8 or I think it was 8 rounds total, and Baldwin was firing 10 rounds. But I mean, the thing about it is it happened, they picked him up great. Like you said, hey, they picked him up at 80 yards. And nothing really happened until about, they were out about 10 to 15 yards, like I said. So that's when they started to engage. What I found interesting is, and part of the interview that he was doing is that, I think what he said is that he wasn't really expecting that to happen. So obviously he was aware, noticed that it was going to happen, but he wasn't really expecting it to happen. And then when stuff started happening and the guy started firing rounds is when he had to start processing it. Right. And then when that conscious decision for him to take action didn't happen until he saw that he was going back to fire again at Torrey. So, I mean, again, that's something that, it's amazing that the guy was firing as fast as he was and took eight shots, didn't hit anybody. They got out of there without a scratch. But in this case, clearly that first round and that first hit is what drives the direction of the gunfight. Because if you take those hits, you're going to automatically go into defensive mode while the other person is in that offensive mode. But keep in mind, there were two of them, and, he's got two guys coming at him. One guy's firing. As far as he knows, he's the only one firing. But as soon as he engaged him and took his 10 rounds and he started hitting the guy with his rounds, the other guy, he wanted no part of it, and he turned and ran.
Yeah, sure. See, that's the thing with criminals, and I want to circle back to a comment that I made in my most recent everyday carry class that it made such a profound impression on the students. I'm going to circle back to that because the other thing that came to my mind, and I don't want to forget this either, is law enforcement, goes through a lot of time in the simulator, and they're faced with shoot, no shoot scenarios. And I found that training super invaluable when I went through that. And as I ran that program for a number of years at our last training facility, because it's amazing how many reactions you get from people who've never been in a simulator before, how real life it can be. And everyone's first natural reaction, of course, when confronted with a violent encounter is to pause, to freeze. And there's a delay. But once they get through the first scenario and they realize, okay, this is how that game is played, you see an immediate impact in the next scenario, the next scenario, the next scenario, where they are more on target, more ready to happily apply those skills. Now, I know Torrey has done a lot of competition shooting, and I'm sure that Baldwin has too. So I'm curious about whether or not they've ever done any kind of simulator style training. And again, I mean, they won the day. It's irrelevant. He made that decision and he did it. But I'm wondering if that in any way impacted his ability to get out even quicker or sooner, challenging them as they were closing the gap before it turned to gunshots. And now that he's lived through it, I wonder if that's going to be his biggest takeaway is next time I'm going to want to challenge these guys sooner. I'm going to say something, make it clear that we're not going to be victims. So other students that are out there listening, hopefully will, there's new indoor simulator shooting ranges popping up all the time that allow you to get some of that shoot, no shoot scenario training. And you got to at least do it once or twice in your life so you get a feel for it, because that's where like all your training clicks, because now you actually have to apply it in a real life situation. And some of it is lethal force, some of it is less lethal. It's not always a draw the gun scenario.
No, that's absolutely true. And I think that that's where people kind of have this misconception, is that every encounter with a criminal threat requires deadly force. That's not always the case. But I think your point is that the simulators that are out there that allows you and forces you to make those decisions is extremely important, because you're taking all that training that you're taking and you're being able to apply it to real life. And that's a hugely important part. What I thought was interesting, it was that 8 seconds, the 8 rounds, that it took for this whole thing for him to click and say, hey, I need to do something. And when we've always talked about time is life, is that a lot of things could have happened, right? It only takes one round to end this thing, no matter which way it goes, whether it's them or you. And I think that was kind of the thing that's important to whether we've evaluated it. I mean, remember, terrorists use that freeze factor, when you pause, that's what they use to get that advantage. They do something so dramatic that gets you to pause and freeze. And, we just need to see that by having these encounters is that increases your perception of the threat more quickly. So it gives you time to react and time to engage.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I like about John Correa and active self-protection and the videos that he does. And there's people that get it, people that don't get it. But immediately when I saw what he was doing when he first got started, I could see the genius in it, because I thought to myself, man, we do this all the time. Guys in law enforcement or military, they look at the footage going back, and they always ask the question, whether it was good or it was bad, what can we learn from it? If we go back and rewatch all that footage, what can we learn from this to make this an even more positive outcome the next time? And so that's really what we're trying to do is, if you're not looking back at it and asking yourself, what can we learn from this, then you're missing a grave opportunity here.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I think John provides, videos that give folks a chance to see how things happen in real life. People can choose to say good or bad about it and how he presents it and those type of things. But if you choose to find value in stuff, you're going to find it, and you're going to find value, and that's what's going to make you better. And I mean, so I think that's, like you said, that's a good thing to be looking back and use that as a learning opportunity. Now, one of the other things in this whole situation that I was thinking about is, one of the directions that I'm kind of changing is I'm getting more into the kind of focusing on the competition shooting matches. And one of the things that they have there is that they, is the important item in there is the hit rate. And that's basically the number of shots you get off in the amount of time that's set up. So if we just kind of look at how BJ did his, he gets off 10 rounds in 5 seconds, which essentially is 2 rounds per second. And the suspect that he ended up shooting was getting off 8 rounds in 5 seconds, but he got no hits. So, it looks and creates this question about what is more important. Is it time or is it accuracy? But I think really, because if you can get off only 2 rounds in 5 seconds, but those 2 rounds hit, it kind of changes how this whole thing happened. And I just think kind of time is the great equalizer here. And, I think there has to be always that balance that we've always talked about, which is balance between speed and accuracy.
Well, and that's the thing though. See, and I don't think it took him 5 seconds to get his 10 rounds. And I say that because I know on my worst day from concealment, I can do 1.2, but let's say 1.5. And I know that once it's out, I can usually do 10 rounds in a second. Okay. And I think I can get them all on target in the A box from 21 feet. So that being said, there's a lot of people who might be listening to this, crying bullshit, who maybe need to watch some of these competition guys. And there's going to be some people here who might not believe how important timing and shot placement is, and how competition plays a role in that. And that's something that I've got a buddy who's in competitions, and he bugs me all the time to go do competitions with him. I'm going this Tuesday. And I've done competitions, and I do middle of the road with all the guys. But again, we got some really serious competitors that show up, and I'm just running my everyday carry Glock too. So that being said, there's some folks out there that don't believe competition has a role in self-defense shooting. They consider it gaming because you get to see the course of fire. You get to kind of decide, well, I'm going to move here first and take out these targets before moving here. And a buddy of mine who is Mike Pannone actually mentioned, and if anyone's not familiar with who Mike Pannone is, you guys need to Google him. But Mike Pannone brought up in a class that I did with him that, gaming is exactly what we do. SWAT teams are gaming their houses that they're swatting several times before they make entry. The military, before they went and got Osama bin Laden, rebuilt the compound and went through every worst case scenario to include a helicopter going down and how they would dispose of the helicopter, which all those things went wrong and all those things happened and they had to do that. So law enforcement and military game it as well. And by going through and doing the gaming, you perform better in real life when it counts. You get an opportunity to practice those transitions, engaging multiple targets, moving and using cover and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to put it is, people are gaming it. I think that makes a lot of sense. I know the argument is that, competition doesn't apply to the defensive shooter. And the primary argument is because, well, the course of fire ahead of time. Well, I mean, I get it, but I think in the defensive world, the equivalent to knowing the course of fire is you having good situational awareness, where you are, where the exits are, what you're going to do if X, Y, and Z happens. I mean, those things are important, and that's what, creates that understanding. And I think it goes back to the OODA loop. And for those that aren't familiar with what the OODA loop is that's observe, orient, decide, and act. And in that defensive situation is that as I'm observing what's going on, I'm orientating towards what is happening. I am making a decision of what actions I'm going to take, and then I actually act and I take that action. And so the more that I can keep a person observing and orienting to what I'm doing, the less opportunity they have to decide and act. And so that's an important part of it. So that's where you get back to that advantage part. So, yes, in a competition, you know where stuff is. But the big thing is nobody's shooting back at you. You're just shooting at paper targets. So the course of fire becomes you understanding your environment, and that's where it's equivalent. So that can be used to my advantage by doing that. And I think that people have to be mature enough to, when I say mature enough, to see the value and then apply it to defensive shooting, because, they are different. But the value, I believe, in competition is huge, and it does translate to the defensive world. But I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm probably going to offend a bunch of people, but I'm going to say my bet is the reason why most defensive shooters know and they claim that competition doesn't apply and it's unfair or whatever, is the reason that they say that is because they know that if they went to a competition, they get smoked. So that's the excuse for why it doesn't apply, in air quotes, because I like to use air quotes a lot. So you can find value in pretty much anything if you're willing to look for it and see it.
Yeah. And we also know that when you're involved in a violent encounter, you revert back to your lowest level of skill. So what everybody needs to focus on here is he put 10 rounds on target, and I'm guessing within 2 seconds. And that was his lowest skill.
Yeah, and I'll post the video up, David, is because I think that he seriously underestimated the time that it took for him to get those 10 rounds off. Because I'm going to say he probably got those 10 rounds off in like 2 seconds. I mean, he is a phenomenal shooter, and I just don't think that that's going to be what actually happened. I think it was quicker than that, but it raises an interesting question that I have for you, is that in this particular case, he fired 10 rounds, and that's what it took to stop the threat. And I know we get a lot of times in classes, well, how many times, do I need to shoot 5 rounds, 10 rounds? What's it going to take for me to stop this guy? And, we talk about all the things that go into factors about the clothes they're wearing and whether or not they're, on drugs or anything, or they have they're prepared to die that day, whatever it might be. But there is always that group of people that question about how many shots that a person took and that it was an excessive amount or something of that nature. So we always see, almost in every class, always somebody that asks, how many rounds am I going to have to fire to stop a criminal threat? So I'm just curious if you see that a lot in your classes. What's kind of been your experience with that question? Do people ask you that a lot?
I don't know that I get that as a question, but it's something that I try to focus on in our EDC Essential class, with setting up the drills in such a way that they don't know how many rounds they're going to have to shoot until I give a command to tell them how many rounds, and it's always something changing between 1 and 10. or I set up targets in such a way that they have to wait until. I mean, you did it in your class, and I thought it was fantastic the way you set up those targets. Now, I don't do the same thing. That it takes an incredible amount of time to set up and run 10 students through. But I try to emphasize to my students that you don't know how many rounds it's going to take. And so the drills we do, you're always going for center mass first, but then a command might come that makes them have to change and transition to the pelvic girdle. And then they might get another command that makes them change and go for the head box, in which case I also emphasize that hits count and misses don't. So if they miss those critical shots, they have to make them up until they get them. They're not allowed to miss when they're going through my class, because it helps remind them that, accuracy is final.
Yeah, that is so true. Really, the emphasis needs to be on accuracy, because like I said earlier, there is a lawyer attached to every round that you fire. But the reason that I asked the question is, when in this encounter, BJ Baldwin fired 10 rounds, and you look back and you said, could it have taken 2? Sure, I suppose it could have. I mean, who knows? We weren't there. We weren't in the situation, but that particular day, 10 is what it took to stop that threat. And the emphasis really needs to be on shooting until the threat stops. And that's exactly what he did. I just remember back to a previous podcast that we did, and we covered cessation of threat. And essentially is you stop when the threat stops. And, that's exactly what happened here. Just keep in mind is that there were 2 guys, and he didn't, once the other guy was down, he didn't start shooting at the other guy because, he was running away. But the interesting thing is the other guy was actually the assailant. It was his brother. And when they, arrested him because he was part of the whole thing, he actually told the police that his brother was the aggressor, and it was all self-defense, and they shouldn't apply, they shouldn't charge him with any kind of charges, because it was, I'm sure he didn't like to have to say it, but it was his brother was the one that did it. So what we'll do is we'll post up the story because I think it's a great example of value of training. And I think just about anybody, regardless of their skill level, is going to get something out of this and learn how these things happen so rapidly, and how the number of shots really isn't a factor in this. It just shoot until the threat stops. And I think it demonstrates how quickly things can happen, and the importance of balancing that speed and accuracy like we were talking about.
Well, and going back to the last 2-day EDC class I did up in Chino Valley, I had a female in the class. She's an older female, and she's a retired ER doctor. And I like to do a roundtable discussion at the beginning of class to find out what everybody's intentions are, what their goals are, what they hope to do with what they learned from that class. Because there's people who enjoy guns, but they're not interested in self-defense training with it. They just want to become more proficient. Maybe they want to do competition. So their goal is not self-defense yet. But if it is self-defense or competition, I want to make sure I sort of tailor the class to the individual. And so this young lady said that, she was, for years she had treated gunshot wounds and, saw the devastating effects of gunshot wounds. And so she's very leery of firearms. But she came to class because she's recently, become curious about firearms and wanted to learn more about them, and has been having a ton of fun with it. And one of the things I see a lot of people, I don't know if they really realize. I can say that law enforcement and military have definitely seen what I'm about to talk about. And that is a look of indifference. When the news is always talking about what motivated this person to do this, what motivated this person to do that. It's like they're looking for a motive, and there really is not a motive. I could care less about the person's motive. I mean, can we look back at that afterwards? Sure. Try to find if there's some way we can redirect this person earlier in their stage of life? Sure. But the number one thing that I see with these attackers, whether it's a mugger with a pocket knife or a street gang member that's holding his pistol sideways, is they are indifferent about life. And I don't mean just your life. I mean all life, including their own life. And there's nothing you can say or do to make that person not want to finish what they showed up for. They genuinely just are indifferent about life and its consequences. And when you meet that person, you know that you've met them. And she chimed in right away and said, "You're absolutely right. There's quite a few of these people that we had to treat because they were shot by law enforcement." And that was exactly how I would describe their attitude and behavior, even when we were bandaging them up, stitching them up, was that these people were indifferent about life altogether.
Yeah, you can't negotiate with that lack of indifference. And it is a component of what we talked about previously with de-escalation. You aren't talking that person down. To make matters worse, they probably have drugs and alcohol on board. So that's going to make it even more difficult. So then it goes into the question about, well, so then how many shots is it going to take, right? That indifference is a huge component in the totality of the situation. And, when you run across somebody like that, it's going down the way it's going down, and there's no changing that. But that indifference, it's definitely a major component in, like I said, that whole totality of the situation and how you're going to engage that person and your responses in that situation, whether it turns into a lethal force encounter or not.
Well, and, it just boils down to, I try to convince people that you're really not the one that makes the decision. Like, these people are the ones that are going to make that decision for you. You will know. That's the reason why you're in class. I see the folks that are taking classes as being the most kind-hearted, gentle. Look, I don't ever want to have to, but if I do, I want to make sure that I'm able to. Kind of learners, and because they have that spirit, that mindset, if they just continue on that path, just keep taking classes and keep taking classes, they will become more confident in their abilities, and you will see the same instinctual nature take over that happened for Baldwin and Torrey. You will do what you've always trained to do, which is shoot until you stop the threat. No questions asked.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody, and that's the biggest thing that I think people can take away, is that anybody's going to be able to tell you in your situation, God forbid that it actually happens to you, is what's going to be the round count. I mean, it just isn't going to happen because there's so many other things that are happening there. But in the final analysis, it's going to take as many rounds as it's going to take to stop the threat. And that's what, we just need to continue to focus on in our training, is not getting focused on round count, but just getting focused on being accurate and being timely. Well, David, I do appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule. I know you're a busy small business owner and you got a lot of demands on your time. So we appreciate you being able to carve out some time to join us on the podcast today.
Well, we need to kick Mike in the butt and get him on here next time.
Oh yeah, we'll figure out a way to get his lazy butt on here. But hey, look, one of the really big advantages though that you don't realize is that with him not being here, I don't have to edit out a bunch of F-bombs.
Well, I gave you one F-bomb.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I must have missed that. Well, I appreciate that.
I gave you one F-bomb.
Okay, well, at least I'm going to have to edit something out, I guess. Well, with that said, I want to give you one last thanks for joining us on the podcast today. And hopefully we will be able to get the three of us, Mike included, together and do another roundtable of discussion on some of this stuff, because I think the topics that we talk about are valuable, and your insights certainly valuable too. So again, thanks for joining us, and we hope to have you on another episode.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so that was a pretty good interview there with David. I thought he gave us a lot of really good insights on his perspective on that particular shooting. And what's kind of, Mike, for you, I mean, on the value of competition versus defensive shooting and this particular situation with BJ Baldwin, what's kind of your take on that?
Well, so here, in my opinion, there's a lot of different things that you get out of it. Shooting is shooting. I mean, and shoot whenever you can, shoot as often as you can. However, my biggest takeaway from competition is that you go in cold. You're always fiddling with your gun, which is probably not a bad thing because it's an admin function, right? That's what I call it. Whenever I have to fiddle with my gun to make it hot and all, it's an admin function. But when you're at a competition, even at like Rio Salado, it's a cold range. So when you get done, you have to you have to take all your bullets out of your gun and then go safe your gun. You put it in a box and then you leave the facility. Then you take your gun back out when you're on the road, when people are driving by, and then you have to load your gun up. It's kind of weird because it's kind of unsafe if you look at it from a safety perspective. So to me, that's probably the only thing I dislike about competition in some cold ranges. I mean, they trust you to have a gun while you're shooting fast and running around with the gun in your hand, but they don't trust you with a loaded gun while you're watching other people play with guns. So it's kind of weird in that aspect. But other than that, the only thing I could really think of and say right off the top is good guy wins, bad guy loses. And that's, in my book, that's a win any time of the day.
Sure. No, ultimately, like Dave said, is, they won the day, and, there's questions to me as to why they would be in that neighborhood. Cause it's Fort Apache and Tropicana at 2:00 in the morning, in Las Vegas is the last place. I'm just telling you folks, that's the last place you want to be at 2:00 in the morning. And so it's just like, why would you even be there? And I get it. There may have been circumstances that they were working late or whatever, and that's why they were there. But, I'm not going to sit there and eat my hamburger there. I'll just, eat it on the road. I'd rather take my chances eating my food driving down the road than sitting out in a parking lot there in that area. But,
and I'll have to say, I've done the exact same thing. Not there. When I go home, late at night, my shift usually ends at midnight, my watch. So when I go home, I'm like, if I didn't get to Chipotle before they close or some other, nasty restaurant, and I'm driving back home, there's an In-N-Out there. And the nice thing about it is that they are open until 2:00 in the morning. So I usually sneak in there and grab a burger. Like you, I also eat it in the car, and my big truck doesn't fit in the drive-thru. So I do have to get out. I, do all my mental preparedness and look around me and see who I'm going to have to shoot first. And then, I go get my burger and then get back in my truck and get out of there.
Now, if anybody from Chipotle is listening, Mike was not suggesting that was terrible food. Just so you know, it's www.chipotle.com.
You have to take what you can get when you can get it.
Oh my God. The big thing to me was that when you look at competition versus defensive shooting, is that in this particular case, when they look at in shooting, is they go, hey, it's that hit rate, right? It's how many shots you take divided by, or it's how many hits you got divided by time. And so it translates into how many hits per second are you getting. And then that's an important factor. So in this case, as we're talking about, is that BJ Baldwin got off, he says the whole thing lasted about 5 seconds. And and like Dave and I were talking about, is that I don't think it lasted nearly that long.
Yeah. Because you got to be less than that.
Yeah. Cause he's a super fast shooter. And so, but let's just say it did last 5 seconds, and the hit rate is basically how many shots did you get in 5 seconds? And you got 10 rounds that hit in 5 seconds. So that gives him a hit rate of 2. And the guy the assailant that fired at him, he fired 8 rounds in the same amount of 5 seconds, and he had a hit rate because he didn't hit anything.
Yeah.
And so those things, so that is important to look at, and is that you can, great, you were first and you got shots off, but if none of those shots hit, then it doesn't matter. And so he's getting in 2 rounds or hitting every second. That seems slow to me. But like I said, that's just, what his observation, what he thought it was. But hit rate is important in competition, and I think it translates into a defensive situation is how many you're going to get on. Because I believe is that the first round, when you hit somebody, that automatically changes what's going to happen in that situation. Because as soon as you get hit, it just changes. You're now on defense instead of offense.
Yep.
So,
well, and that's like, I have rules for the draw, right? So if you're going to be drawing, basically, if you're the bad guy, you're going to draw and then you're going to shoot, right? If you're the good guy, you're probably going to draw second, but you're going to be first to shoot. So you want to try and make sure that those hits land. Right.
Yeah. No. And that's the same thing. It only can take one shot to end this whole thing, and it could have been the same thing as he could have missed that guy could have shot 8 times and only hit one time, and that's the one, and it could have been the 8th one, and it ended, and somebody's life was ended. So it just doesn't matter. The first one it hits is, that's when it starts counting.
And remind me, wasn't the bad guy shooting at the girlfriend first? Yeah,
and so that was like
so that gives you a little bit of an edge.
Well, and that was the thing that we were talking about, if you remember, is he shot 2 rounds at Tori, then he fired 6 rounds at BJ, and then it wasn't until the shooter was deciding to go back and shoot at Tori that it all of a sudden clicked in his mind that he needs to engage this guy.
Yeah.
And so that's that. And so as soon as he got that 8th round off, all of a sudden, 10 rounds comes at him, and it's, and it's over in a second. But it's just, I think it was the lag of just trying to, even though was aware that they were there and he's a good shooter and all those things, it's still that mental preparation for, I can't believe this is actually happening.
And that maybe that's a good takeaway in competition versus like people, that teach firearms or have taught in law enforcement or have been in law enforcement. I know several cops, and for me anyways, I'll talk about what I think. When I leave my house, I'm thinking, when is the gunfight going to happen today? Versus when you're at competition, you're like, oh, I know where the gunfight is. It's going to be here on the line when the buzzer goes. Right.
Right.
So we talked about this. We remember we had that little fan club that all the instructors got together, and we were kind of sharing information. And the one guy was that one guy that was just a jerk. And
yes.
I was talking, what I was trying to portray, which is really not that good because I suck at typing and English language in general. I was trying to say, listen, when you're on the clock, you're listening for the tone, right? You're waiting for that. The way I listen for tone is I'm waiting for that little tiny speaker inside of that little gizmo box to vibrate so that it gets to my ear so that I can unleash my gun. When I'm looking at something, I'm looking for identifiers or clues that the gunfight is about to happen. So that, to me, that's much faster, because when I pull my gun out and I'm in the situation, I don't have to shoot you. I can just pull my gun out. But so I can already be there, I'm already there at game on type. And that's what I was trying to portray in that one scenario when we were talking about that. He's like, "Oh, you can't be that fast." I go, "Well, yeah, I'm quick. If I'm under 0.8 on the buzzer, I'm going to be faster by sight because I can see the clues already happening. If you're at 2 a.m. and 2 guys are approaching you rather quickly, they're closing the gap, something is about to happen."
Well, and that's exactly the point, right? Is that speed, time is the great equalizer. And so, and I think we've talked about this before, was, most of the people, lose their shots at 25 on a qualification, and they draw slower because they know that they have to take the time to be accurate, when it's like, you got to get out of the holster no matter what you're doing. Even if you're at the clearing station, you got to draw with a purpose.
Right.
And the reason why is that the quicker you can get out on the target, and that's where it gives you the time, is because now you're out there already, and now you can take the time to get your sight picture. But if you're dilly-dallying and taking forever to get your gun out and get your gun out to where you can get a sight picture, then you're behind.
Yep.
So that's why it's so important, is to get the draw out fast and practice. And I think that, it's probably a great conversation for another episode, is how important it is on how you train. I believe that you train speed and accuracy separate from each other, and then eventually bring them together.
Yes.
Is that, at 3 yards, you should be practicing it. You're not going to miss.
Right.
So you're not worried about accuracy, but you should be doing nothing more than practicing speed.
Yep.
Yep. And then when you need to worry about, then you can train accuracy separate. And then you get that mindset to where all I'm doing is I'm just practicing to get out as fast as I can. Yep. And that's the whole thing, right? And correct me if I'm wrong or if you disagree, but if I'm trying to take a precision shot, why would I come out of the holster slow?
Right. Yeah, you want to eat up that time as much as you can right there.
Yeah. You should be coming out as fast at 25 yards as you do at 3.
Yep. Yeah. Why wouldn't you want to take your time lining up your sights versus drawing the gun out of the holster, right? I agree with you. I've seen people that when they go to draw it for an accurate shot, they draw all nice and slow and they bring the gun up, and I'm like, okay, you're dead like 10 times over.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I don't know. I think that's why that's where I see the value of when you do the competition thing, is because your score is going to suck if you're out there taking just dilly-dallying, taking your time forever to draw out on those longer range. I mean, you don't see any of those high speed dudes that are, super, super fast. You don't see them taking their time on the draw, man. They get that thing out as fast as possible onto target, no matter the distance. It doesn't matter. And that's just a mindset everybody should have. Everybody should have.
Yeah, the discipline comes when your gun is level and you're bringing your finger on the trigger. That is where the slowness comes into.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying in that is people would take these great shots. They'd get out of the holster fast. They'd take these shots, and then they do this, it was like like you see the garland on your Christmas tree, is it's got these droops between where it hooks on. And that's what everybody was doing, is they'd take a shot and then their muzzle would just drop in this big loop to the next one. And that's where all that time is lost, is if you just go a straight line instead of that long loop, you could have cut off seconds in total. Yeah.
Eyes to target, gun to follow. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was interesting, but I think that's all kind of, again, I just thought that BJ Baldwin one was a good example to talk about because he's a competitive shooter, she's a competitive shooter, and obviously that translated to win the day. So don't knock it. So one of the other things, and before we get out of here, is I wanted to talk about was this controversy here that we have where it's. And again, I don't want to get too much into politics, but this one I think is important. It has to do with some of the stuff I know we talked about before, is this cancel culture. And have you heard about this Justin Rohrwasser? I think that's how you say his name.
No, because he probably plays in the NFL.
Oh, okay. Well, you're right. He does. So he is a rookie kicker for the New England Patriots. Boo. Boo.
Well, you lost me at rookie, so.
Yeah, well,
So let me guess. He's a kid, right? He's probably in his early 20s.
Yes, you are correct, sir.
Yeah. So that seems to be the most impressionable people, right? When you're a kid, you get pushed into everything. So let me just preface that.
Sure. So here is the controversy that surrounds Justin Rohrwasser. Is that
alleged controversy?
Well, yeah. Well, let me see. What's Jameel Hill, from the former ESPN host who, hates the president and thinks everybody's racist. She had to comment on it. So that's why I'm saying this is a controversy. So here's the story. Okay. Is this kid gets drafted. I think he got drafted like I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's some round in the draft.
It was 150th or something.
Something like that. Which, still, hey, that's pretty good. So they draft him. He's there to replace him as a kicker. And shortly after, they find on his Twitter is he has pictures of himself. Controversy over his tattoo has taken on Patriots draft pick Justin Rohrwasser, led to the kicker breaking down and crying last weekend. And all this had to do was with a tattoo on his left arm of the logo of the 3 Percenters. That's it. He had, it's got the 13 stars, 3% in it with the 1776. And that's what's on his arm. And that's all he's got on there. It doesn't say anything else. Now, here's the thing that's interesting is that they call it a right-wing paramilitary group that had a connection to the deadly Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, which was in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017, which most people remember that with the car driving through the crowd and all that kind of stuff. And so this guy is now they're just, they're coming after him. They're calling him a racist and everything else. And his thing is that he felt it was a tattoo. He got it when he was 18. He thought it was a tattoo as an expression of military support. And now he says, hey, well, I guess I'll just cover it up. And so they dig into this kid and they say, hey, his Instagram feed includes likes Oh, ooh, the horror. Likes of President Donald Trump and right-wing connected figures such as Ayn Rand and Jordan Peterson. Now, I don't know who Jordan Peterson is, but anyway, so you know me. So I had to go, and I don't like to talk about things unless I'm a bit educated on the topic. So, you know, what's always been your perception or your understanding of what the 3%ers are?
So the way I understand it is that 3%ers, right? Or back in the day, that's how many people took up arms to defeat the British. It was only 3% of the population. That's where the 3%ers came from.
Correct.
I think.
No, that's exactly where their whole thing was, is that it was the 3%.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't to get rid of the government, or it was to take up arms against the British. So I don't know why this has gone to far right or wherever. I mean, I was just looking up Wikipedia, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's the Southern Poverty Group." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'll stop reading right there." Anytime you think those yahoos are right in anything is enough for me. As a constitutionalist, I proudly wear the 3% badge. Actually, I wear the 1% badge because I am way crazier than any 3%er, guaranteed.
Well, here's the thing is that, so what I did is I went onto their website and I checked some things out about them, because that was my understanding. I was like, the 3% was the 3% that stood up against the British during the Revolutionary War, and they've just kind of carried that on, that, you know, to save our the Union, it's going to take, you know, the 3% and, you know, nowadays to do the same thing. And so it's taken in that Constitution, you know, constitutional patriot, that type of stuff. So I went on their website, and believe it or not, they have a bylaws, a 43-page bylaws of their organization. And like I said, you know me, so I read it. And one of the claims is that the 3%ers are some sort of a, you know, racist group, and it was all about the Charlottesville incident. And I found it interesting is that the initial publication and revision of their bylaws was prior to this by over a year, and so in it they specifically state, you know, what their morals and what their mission is. So I'll just give a couple of these things. Is our mission is to accomplish our vision, which includes providing a framework to grow our organization with national recruitment, provide a focus on education of ourselves and others regarding the Constitution, the political arena, local laws, preparation and self-preservation. And 3 is to increase involvement in community outreach events, in disaster preparedness and response for veterans, elderly, and other people in need. And I just thought, okay, this stuff doesn't sound like any of the things that has to do with it. And so I think it's important is that before we go off and just start, you know, I know 5 people that I work with that are 3%ers, and they're or average guys, and they're just hardworking, you know, guys that come to work every day and they love their country and that type of stuff. And I don't take them in any way, shape, or form as that they're going to be any of these type of racist groups. But so one of the things, it's funny that you bring up the Southern Poverty Law Center, because one of the things that is blacklisted on their organizations, they have a thing in here of blacklisted organizations that you can't even be affiliated with in any way, shape, or form to be a member of the 3%ers, is Antifa. As an example, is Antifa and the Southern Poverty Law Center.
There you go.
Yeah. So they have things that are required in their that there's no threatening violence or harassment, no talking of overthrowing the government, no racism or discrimination, and you can't be physically being an aggressor or an antagonist. I mean, these are all things in the disciplinary stuff that they have in here.
And that's why I would never be a true 3%er, because I like fighting, I like antagonizing, and I hate everybody.
Well, and I mean, so the following topics are strictly off limits for them. And that is threats of violence or harassment, talk of overthrowing the government, or racism and discrimination. So I just thought, and I was like, man, you know, we got this guy, and that's what bugs me about it, right? Is I'm not a 3%er. I don't belong to it at all, but and like I said, I know people and I get what the point behind it is. And, I see where they're trying to go with, and the people that I know, heck, if it comes down to it, I certainly want those people to be, in my corner versus the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing is that I guess it bothers me so much about it is that this guy at 18, he gets it tattooed on him. And he said, back then I just didn't know what it meant. And so now that I know what it means, he's going to have that whole tattoo removed.
Well, obviously he still doesn't know what it means.
Exactly. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself going, I don't know. I'm just thinking to myself going, this guy you talk about being free and having freedom and to be able to do what it is that you want. And this guy thinks that he's free.
Yeah.
And he isn't.
So
because he has to, in order to fulfill the dream that he has to be a kicker in the NFL, he has to change who he is and what he believes in just so he can play football.
So now I don't know, maybe I'm spitballing here, but that doesn't seem like the dream that he wants. He wants money, and that's why he's changing his ethos. It's the way I look at it.
Oh, okay. And there's probably that could be true. And so if it was his dream, he doesn't want to give up his dream, so he sells himself out. But the other way that you're talking about is he sells himself out to make money, and he does it in front of everybody by erasing something on him that he felt at the time that he should tattoo on himself just so he can participate.
Right.
I just can't believe it. It just shocks me that anybody would do anything like that.
But at the same time, maybe he's saying, whatever, I'll delete the stupid tattoo. I'll still be a 3%er and I'll still get made.
I guess. I don't know. I guess.
Now the Jordan Peterson that I was thinking about was a Canadian psychologist. And if you ever hear his comments, they're extremely, extremely provocative. Like if you think about what he says, it's very, 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 very cool. So the other provocative thought about that is, guess who else is on the Southern Poverty's group of, oh my gosh, they're right-wing cultists, the Oath Keepers. So that just goes to show you where those crazy chuckleheads our minds are. So like I said, I don't put too much stock in those idiots.
Well, like I said, I think that everybody should just do research on stuff and try to take the time to figure out what it is. And, like I said, it's this cancel culture and everybody does something and offends somebody or whatever.
And that's what Jordan Peterson was saying is it's what you think. It's what your truth is. The truth is the truth, right? So the problem there is that this ESPN host, I forgot what her name is.
Jamil Hill.
Yeah. Her truth, right, is that that's what the 3%ers are. They're trying to overthrow the government, which is not the case at all. If you go look up history, that's what 3%ers were, picking up arms against the British, right? So in her truth or in her timeline, that's how she thinks of it. We think of it, the Oath Keepers, the 3%ers. We talk about justice, true government, which is the Constitution, and that's where I think the 3%ers ideally go.
Sure. Liberty and freedom.
Yeah. Freedoms. Exactly. Right. The ability to pursue life, liberty, and happiness, and I don't care what you do as long as it doesn't intrude on any of that.
Sure. Well, I wanted to bring up one thing, and I know we've held people here for a long time and a longer episode because we had David involved here, but I wanted to bring something up that I would love to be able to bring this guy on to this podcast. It would be, a really cool thing. His name is Jack Donovan. Now, if you remember, Mike, hopefully you remember 2 or 3 years ago for Christmas, we met at Rob's house and I gave everybody a Christmas present. Do you remember? Remember it was a book?
I do.
Okay. And this book was called The Way of Men.
Yes.
And it's written by this guy named Jack Donovan. And I gave it to and the whole point of this is you need to read the book, and you need to give it to the men in your life that are important. And so I gave out 8 of those books because all the guys that were important, I gave one of those to them to read. And you also need to give it to your wife, so they can read it, so they can understand. And it's a great book to get back to understanding why men are men, not in against the whole feminism crap that's out there and the toxic masculinity. This is just getting back to why men are men and it's just human nature. But there was an interesting post that Jack Donovan put up that I think is really, in this time, that I think is worth everybody listening to it and really thinking about it, because it's important as to why everybody, the protests are tearing all this stuff down, and it doesn't make any sense. Lincoln, and now they're defacing the 9/11 memorial, and they're knocking over headstones, and they have nothing. And so this is the thing that he posted, and I think it's important for everybody to listen to this, is what is sacred? I'm often asked for book recommendations, and the one that he recommended was this one called The Sacred and the Profane. It is one of the books that has influenced me the most over the past 5 years. I first explored it in an essay that came from some other website. Since then, I've constructed sacred spaces working primarily from their conceptual frame. It has also shaped the way I see values and is contributing to the writing I'm doing about relationships between men and their gods. A key concept is that without the sacred, all space is homogeneous, which means it's all the same, right? Chaotic, disoriented, and profane. Man creates a break in this homogeny by declaring something sacred and giving it higher value. This higher value creates a point of orientation, an axis mundi, an axis of his world. And all things are measured by their distance from that axis. Identity resides in the space around it. When man inhabits a new space or declares a new space or thing sacred, he in effect creates a new world around it. This could be as simple as a home. When you have determined where your home is, all points are measured from it and in reference to it. How far from home? How far back? How different from home? It could also be some sort of church or holy space. What is sacred in the church is the holiest thing, and everything further from that thing is less holy. The Vatican is an axis mundi, so is Mecca, a perfect illustration of the concept, since Muslims around the world pray facing this point. So here's the last thing. These axes combine shared narratives and values. An axis could also be an individual value. Once something has been determined to be a value, everything further from it becomes increasingly profane. If I value freedom and sovereignty, every move in the direction of being coerced or dependent becomes increasingly profane. If I value strength, weakness is the antithesis. So when you have determined what is valued, you can move toward it and recognize when you find yourself moving away from it. So I just thought that was a huge thing for us to realize when it goes to why is the flag so important as an American? It isn't because it's the colors or the piece of cloth. It's because it's sacred. And it tells us from that point what isn't. And so, I don't know. I guess I just wanted to bring that up when we were talking about this. Somebody who gave up what was obviously was enough to have tattooed on them, and they erased it just so they could make money or play a game. And if it's sacred to you, it should always be sacred, no matter what you do or who doesn't like it. I don't know. Just my opinion. Absolutely. So I'll leave a link to that book. I think everybody should read it. Like I said, if there was any way to ever get that guy on this show to talk to him, he's a pretty intense dude. But who knows? So on that note, I'll let everybody go. We've held you guys here long enough. We appreciate you sticking around and listening. If you got any comments or questions about anything that we said today, we'd love to hear from you. Send an email to us at podcast@latentforce.com, or leave a comment or a question in the comment section when we release the episode, and we'll try to answer questions. Before we get out of here, Mike, any last comments you have?
Nope. Stay safe. Have a good day. Drink a lot. Smoke some cigars.
And on that note, we're out of here. And that'll be a wrap for this episode of the Latent Force Prepared Defensive Action Podcast. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, or visit our website, www.latentforce.com, so you can get all the latest info from Latent Force. If you have any comments or questions on this episode, or if you have a suggestion for a future show, you can reach us by shooting an email to podcast@latentforce.com. On behalf of Mike Garza and myself, thank you for joining us. Be safe, and as always, stay in the fight.
Peace out.